To End All Wars, Part 2, Legio Perditus. My name is Nathaniel Dale, and technically speaking, I'm dead. Well, only legally, of course. I was recorded having died of my wounds after my first and only mission. That, of course, is complete and utter humbug. As I'm speaking to you now, it's quite obvious that I'm very much alive. But the Church and His Holiness had decided it was best that I be kept out of view of the world until the depths of my change could be plumbed more thoroughly. I still bear the mark over my heart, and it hurts constantly. Sometimes more than others. It still shifts occasionally between the mark of Nergal and yet some unknown sigil. At times it almost resembles the script of the Bible that found its way into my possession following my mission at Megiddo. The language seems to be only understood by myself, much to the annoyance of the Church. There was talk of placing the book in the archives, as its historical and ecclesiastical import were too great to ignore, and it was too valuable to leave to chance that someone might take it or it could be lost. However, it was quickly understood that anyone who came into contact or possession of it was quickly compelled to return the book to me, and only me. This, at least, appeared to assuage the Church's fears of losing the priceless relic. My other changes were a little more complicated. Nergal claimed to have cursed me with immortality, but I still sustain injury and can get ill, etc. I just simply cannot expire. A wild bout of pneumonia last year should have ended my life. According to those in my attendance during the episode, I had been in a death-like state for 36 days before waking. They told me my eyes responded to light, my skin never grew cold, and I occasionally drew breath. But on the 37th day, I just rose and if nothing transpired. Baffling, but not entirely unexpected at this point in my life. Ultimately, a great many conclave were convened to determine if and how my new gifts were to be utilized. When I was asked to testify if I'd been given any instruction or writ, I simply informed them that neither them nor I could command this ability any more than we could alter the tide. Finally, a decision was made that I would be the head of a revitalized effort to preempt or interrupt any and all attempts to summon dark forces unto His creation. I would have been remiss if I hadn't impressed upon the council that I was a pacifist and would not shed blood. They preempted my protestations by informing me that I would not be made to visit violence on anyone personally. While this did little to assuage my worry that I would eventually be tested, the Church seemed more than confident that my new role would be more or less one of administrator or a conductor. After the last conclave authorizing the formation of our order concluded, we were immediately summoned for assignment, and I really did mean immediately. We hadn't even left the hall where the conclave had been held when we were informed that we had received distressing rumors. The missionaries the Church had sent to the Southern Americas were sending what could be called disturbing reports, to say the least. Near the port of Rio de Janeiro, on or around Mount Corcovado, the missionaries claimed in the last several months, upwards of a year now, several groups of men who appeared to be of no scholarly or godly cloth and appeared to be lusting after only one thing: power, had arrived. The Archbishop continued to talk quite freely as he led the 6 of us into the rear antechamber. You see, since some of the closer calls we came into during the Great War, we decided to put out feelers and messages to a large portion of our missionaries to observe and learn all local customs, learn their histories and legends, so we can compare and see if such things were similar to our own. Your encounter with Nergal's avatar shook the Church to its very core, Nathaniel. Nothing in recent or even living memory has happened like it. Sure, we've had an occasional exorcism, but nothing close on display of raw power you described. Needless to say, we felt a little bit underprepared, and in case something similar happened in the future, this is why we've sanctioned your order. As he finished speaking those words, the door closed behind us. On the table was a large leather folder. The Archbishop carefully undid the twine wrapping on the folder. Out of it, he pulled a small canister of movie film, a bundle of photographs, and several pages of handwritten and typed notes. The local tribes had a legend that giants walked their lands in the time before their gods. That when the gods took their land and gave it to the people, the giants that walked had turned into the mountains. Some mountains, anyway. Well, one of the giants was thought to be Mount Corcovado, and after Megiddo, we implored the missionaries to investigate further. Their first expeditions located a cave network through the mountain. The Archbishop handed us the photos of a large dried-out grotto deep inside Mount Corcovado. where a strange rock formation was dead center. At a glance, it looked like bubbles made of rock stuck in the floor, but each subsequent photo revealed more and more. The scale was enormous. The formation was at least 4 times the height of a man, if the next photo was to be believed. The next photos after that were from inside the formation itself. What I thought first were bubbles were more analogous to large stone leaves or wings maybe. Given the texture, all that seemed to converge into a central point toward the roof of the structure. At the center on the floor, what could only be described as rings, twice as big as a man, were embedded in the rock. 2, according to the reports. The Archbishop spoke again. They can't identify the rock, what it's made from, nor can they seem to chip off samples for our scientists to even examine. I asked for a translation of the words on the photo absently, a level of fear and dread welling up within me. The Archbishop responded with, "The Guardian of Eternity. That's what the locals call it anyway. They say it's a place of despair and evil. For generations, they've avoided it." "So why task us?" I asked the Archbishop. "Simply consecrate the area and destroy the entrance." It's not that simple, Nathan. It's been tried. The conquistadors tried to destroy it as profanity to God, but all of their explosives failed to destroy it or even scratch the cave surface. And the Spaniards all allegedly turned to salt right after. Hence our renewed interest. But there's a hiccup. We're not the only interested parties, obviously. Rumors are circulating from Bavaria that occultists have taken a keen interest in some of the sites we've taken. They've been to the Corvinus graves, attempted to excavate the Well of Souls, and now this. Nathan, I don't have to impress upon you the urgency of this. With the creation of your order, you've been given access to much of the church's resources we can spare. 12 researchers are currently combing the archives searching for anything of relevance, and you'll be assigned a bodyguard. And before you protest, the Holiness insists. You're too valuable to risks, immortal or not. 5 volunteers from the Swiss Guard will accompany your team, and that's all I want to hear of it. Your ship will depart in 5 days. We've taken the liberty of being rather liberal with the provisioning. You may need to negotiate assistance locally, so we've allotted for that too. I piped up, "Archbishop, what can you tell us about these occultists? Like, what am I going to be facing? Are they prone to violence? What do we need to be prepared for?" I must have had thousands of other questions, but nothing I could articulate with any sort of brevity. "Well, Nathaniel, they certainly aren't any professionals. Our observers have noted they make quite a mess wherever they go. Trails of bodies, archaeological sites destroyed. Best we can figure, they're mostly extremely dangerous amateurs. However, their leader, a man we only know as Otto von Kraus, is extremely dangerous. He seems to have a substantial understanding of a broad area of occult subjects and rituals, but he's either ignorant of the consequences of his behavior or simply doesn't care. Myself, I'm more inclined to believe malice is more at play than anything. We're not sure who's funding his expeditions, but their moral compass is almost certainly unabashedly askew." We spent much of that evening receiving briefings from the various researchers, each offering their own hypotheses on the structure itself. These range from the gateways to the afterlife, to intricately carved altars from a hitherto yet unknown form of basalt rock. Although that was discarded almost immediately based on the fact that the team reported about their tools being unable to scratch the surface. The hypothesis that caught my attention almost instinctively was Ezekiel's wheels. My mind raced at the potential of what that one could mean. My trepidation and fear was replaced by excitement and curiosity. At the stroke of 11, we retired to bed so we could meet the day and its challenges with a clear mind. As I slept, my dreams were no refuge. Images of the horror I'd seen and endured played in my mind's eye like a macabre parody of the new motion pictures that were gaining in popularity across the seas. Bodies strewn across the battlefield, lumbering metal behemoths, festooned with guns broken and burning, no voices, only the sound of fire burning, and silence for a time. Carried on the wind from the dark horizon was the sound of cruel laughter. I awoke with a start soaked in sweat. Still only 4 a.m. I decided I would read a few passages and attempt to sleep again. My hands picked up the Bible from Megiddo and opened it. The page before me was the book of Ezekiel, chapter 1, verse 15. I turned the pages, same thing, again and again. Well, I guess the Lord is perfectly entitled to be both blunt and frustratingly vague and mysterious all at once. Chuckling to myself, I thought, okay, well, let's start here. I began to read and was struck by how differently this progressed than the book of Ezekiel I was familiar with. Although at this point, I feel that anything this book does shouldn't surprise me. But I always assumed that a sense of wonder was one of his greatest gifts to mankind. My eyes were constantly being drawn to the gilded image of Ezekiel's wheel. It bore a striking resemblance to the description and photos of part of the guardian. Ophinum? Would the other be a seraphim then? Now that I had more questions, I got robed and made my way to the archives, stopping along the way to grab a cup of strong tea. Several archivists had met me at the outer antechamber and expressed to them I needed everything on the subjects I had laid out in my list, and everything they could find on the beings made of or turned into stone. Encouraged by how matter-of-fact they took my request and got to work, kind of put my mind at ease on this one. Several days later, we prepared to embark. The small liner the church had secured was loaded and awaiting our arrival to depart. Gathering our luggage, we boarded and settled in. It was a far more relaxed affair compared to my last major voyage. Gone were the soldiers, weapons, and instruments of destruction. In their place was laughter, smiling faces, and loads of people in casual attire without a care to be seen. I breathed in deep. It was intoxicating. It was innocence. I shuffled around in my unfamiliar clothes. We were asked to keep a low profile, so everyone in our party was dressed in casual linens. The church didn't want to answer questions of why a phalanx of holy men were descending on the port of Rio. I implored my compatriots to enjoy themselves, and try as they may to blend in, I did have to expect the guard to perish of fits upon being asked to relax. I'll admit, the thought did give me a little chuckle. We spent 9 days at sea before reaching Rio. When we docked at port and gathered our things and departed for the local mission. The motor cars we boarded took us the most direct route. As we unpacked, the priest ushered me to the mission's basement. The assembled clergy showed me the abundance of maps, pictures, and cursory work putting it all together. Greetings, Nathaniel. I'm Padre Jorge Santos. It's an honor to meet you, although I lament the circumstances of your visit. You'll find we've done much of the legwork here as we could for you, but our resources are kind of limited. It's quite okay, Jorge. Please don't apologize. We've come quite prepared ourselves, and His Holiness has sent additional provisions and resources to assist your ministry. Thank you, it's most appreciated. We should be ready to leave after Mass tomorrow if you're okay with that. That's perfect. How long is the travel to the site? We'll be traveling 2 hours by motor car. Then we'll be met by our guide. He'll take us the rest of the way on horseback. That'll be about 3/4 of the day, then we'll need to make camp. Then there's the trails. It's hard going, but surely it's nothing you're unaccustomed to? I chuckled. I think we'll be fine. We'll turn in, we'll attend your Mass tomorrow, and then we'll carry on with our mission. The next day after Mass, we mounted up and departed on the next leg of our mission. A half hour into our journey, the mark on my chest began to grow painful, more so than usual. I felt a rising dread as I looked under my shirt to see the mark shifting and turning red. I swear I could see the sigils glowing underneath, almost crawling as they morphed from one to another. It felt as if I was being warded away. The guard captain, noticing my discomfort, asked if I was okay. I warned him that we probably should be on alert. Something was feeling off. Maybe the occultists were about, or this place was bound by some sort of ritual and rite, but our archives were frustratingly vacant on the subject of local legends and demonology. I urged us to press onwards. We still had most of a day yet to travel, and couldn't afford to dally. Jorge led us to a local shepherd who agreed to guide us to the entrance of the cave. He loaded our supplies onto the beasts of burden, and Marco, his son, introduced themselves to us. As Marco and his son Costa introduced themselves to us, Costa spoke with a much better English than his father, so he and Jorge would translate if needed. We rode for hours until darkness had set upon us. Marco and Costa impressed upon us the need to make camp. Traveling in the jungle at night was akin to suicide. Too many nocturnal predators, they said. The Swiss guard took shifts on lookout while we slept. We woke at daybreak, ate quickly, and moved out, unsure of how much time would be needed to reach the Guardians. We encountered the entrance early in the morning, oddly enough, a scant 2 hours from when we broke camp. The captain asked how I felt. I admitted to him that this place didn't feel as if I had originally anticipated. The dread is there, but something else too. I can't quite figure it out or put my finger on it. As we approached the entrance, the captain ordered 2 guards to scout ahead. This is when we encountered our first major obstacle. None of the guard were capable of passing the entrance, as if a barrier were solid and impermeable. I came forward to inspect it and passed my arm right through. This was fascinating, but we had to move quickly. So the Swiss decided to stay back and make sure no one followed us. I was handed a small knife. As I was handed a small knife, the captain told me, "It's a tool, not a weapon. Treat it as such, and you'll not violate your oath." And then he turned to Jorge and handed him a Mauser pistol and told him, "Guard him well. You're one of us today. Actie e fidelitas." "I'll do my duty, Captain. Don't you worry." As we passed the veil entering the shrine tunnel, I was suddenly racked and overcome with a pain so visceral, so intense, it can only be described as maybe vaguely being flayed alive cell by cell. I doubled over and screamed. I woke to Jorge slapping my face. How long was I out? Maybe 10 seconds? A red light came from you, it blinded me, and then it got sucked into the cave wall, and then all these symbols appeared, down the walls, further in. Alright, let's just press on. Whatever's here knows we're coming. Wait, Nathaniel, where's the entrance? What do you mean? I began to ask as I picked myself up. I looked where we had just entered, and it was gone. All that was there was a long tunnel going back as far as we could see. Wait, how can we see? What do you mean, Jorge questioned back. We're in a cave with no lamps, sun, torches that are lit, yet we can see outside as if it's played out in the open. Well, I'm stumped, Jorge kind of said sheepishly. Well, gift horses and all. Let's move on. We began moving downward toward where we figured the guardian to be. As we moved further into the cave, we quickly stopped again to look at our feet. What's that noise? I asked aloud as I kneeled to take a look with my torch. I swept a bit of dust with my hand. It looked like pieces of white wood chips. I scooped up a handful to take a closer look. God in heaven, I exclaimed. It's bone shards. It's all bone shards. We made the sign of the cross and resolved to move on. The sound of fire began to echo through the cave the deeper we went. As the sound grew in a deafening pitch, it stopped all at once, and the walls began to glow, blood red, with the sigils that had first appeared on the mark I bear. I think we're near it, Jorge. It hurts the closer we get. We turned the last corner into the chamber. Mother of God, they look like biblical angels had, Dale, as a tall, dark-haired man holding a pistol said as he stepped into view. Don't be foolish, Herr Dale. I'm quite aware of who you are and what you are. Okay, please kindly stop where you are and don't show anything foolish. You're not the only one who's been touched by a greater power. Your companion, however, is completely superfluous to us. The German raised his pistol and shot Jorge in the chest. No! What have you done? I ran to Jorge's side and tried to stop the bleeding. He'd been shot right in the lower chest and bleeding out onto the floor. He gurgled and began choking on his blood as I felt his life ebb from him. He looked right into my eyes as he lay dying, the fear palpable on his face, as he tried to mouth the Lord's Prayer. I finished it aloud for him as his last breath faded. With tears clouding my vision, I doubled over in my grief, my rage welling up. I clenched my fists. I felt my mark glowing red hot, burning deep within inside me. I screamed. I let my rage consume me, and a wave of force blasted across the grotto, lifting and smashing the German against the wall, and shattering the rock, coating the angels. A blinding light surrounded me and everything, a light so full that it felt tangible, but cold. I could feel another presence nearby, a force I had not felt before. It felt distant and close, powerful but indifferent. I felt as if I was being lifted up. A voice, no, many voices, called out to me all at once. Why are you here? Who are you? I responded. The voice, louder this time, shouted into my mind. Why are you here? I was sent by the church. You mortals have a disgusting habit of meddling in affairs that are beyond your station. I managed to utter back, "Who are you?" As the words left my lips, it was before me in all its terrifying glory. I felt an overwhelming urge to abase myself before it. Its eyes stared into me, its massive wings rotating around, spinning so fast they could barely be seen. They would stop, the eyes upon it blinking, and then rotate the other way as it spoke each word into me. "Why are you here?" "I'm here to save mankind. That's my holy duty. To serve God as you." I was cut off as I spoke by a terrifying laughter. "I serve no God." "You're a seraphim. I thought all angels serve our Lord God." "Do we now?" "You serve the devil?" "There is no devil, no hell, no demons, no heaven. Not as you know it. Judging by the stink of you, you never will." "Liar!" The wings came to a halt, and the eyes focused on me and began to glow brighter than the light. Suddenly, as the tips of 4 wings stabbed into me, sharper and harder than steel, each overlapping feather veined like a finely serrated blade carving deep into my body. I could feel the blood seeping softly out of me as the angel's wings skewered me, as every eye turned so black they drank the light before me. "I told you, foolish mortal, you meddle in things beyond your comprehension. You didn't relent. Now you will see for yourself." The eyes shot beams of pure, abysmal darkness washing over me. I saw wars, endless slaughter between entities of incomprehensible scale and power, legions of angels waging endless battles in the void, worlds, stars consumed, or simply swatted away by things that were simply too alien to understand, things that didn't even know or care to know we were alive. "What is this?" I screamed as it felt like my body was being shredded cell by cell. Before the detritus that coalesced into your universe was even born, we existed. Don't even ask because you lack the language to even describe it. What you call angels, gods, monsters, and why even think of demons and devils as the universe winked into existence. Well, all life is competition, so we competed against everything. Those who served your creator fought those who served other creators. Massive creatures, swallowing entire galaxies, their creators, galaxies, armies, and creations wholesale in one blink. Vast swarms of entities that exist solely to drain the life essence of sapient life. What you fail to see is how utterly insignificant you and your species are. You are less than ants. Your creator probably forgot he even made you, if he even still exists. We came here simply because it was out of the way, and we simply slept while you simply found what you consider to be new and interesting ways to slaughter yourself in mimicry of your betters. Clearly, you cannot understand your place. When I finish tearing you apart, I will bathe this place in darkness. So scream of your race's dying. It will put me back to sleep. As I felt what little sanity I had left being ripped apart one neuron at a time, I saw it black light spread outwards, bathing the world in a despair that drove all to death's embrace. Mothers and fathers killed their children before cutting their own throats. Droves walked into the seas, rivers, and off cliffs, jumped from buildings. As my despair grew to its nadir, my consciousness faded away. The last thing I saw before I faded out was a single beam of light bisect the main eye of the angel, and I fell. And as I fell, I watched in a trance, unsure of what I saw was a dream. Was I dying for real? This felt different. My focus snapped back briefly to the lights. Beams of light and darkness stabbing at each other. Shards being shattered from the winged angel with every beam of light. They seemed to be coming from everywhere at once, and then darkness again. As my consciousness began to drift, I heard a voice beckon me, like the sound of tinkling bells on the breeze. "You're not done yet." What looked like 2 rotating rings floated over me, It twisted in on itself and folded inside out while rotating in ways that my eyes and mind rebelled to look at. Do not speak, only listen. Your time is not now. You need to remember the truth revealed when the time comes. Your souls, your lives will all depend on it. Your wounds are now gone, but we can do nothing of your curse. When the time comes, call, you'll remember. As the words faded from my mind, I felt myself slip into the darkness, embraced the warm embrace of rest it offered. I closed my eyes, and I saw the stars, all of the stars of the universe. I didn't so much see as felt it, a disturbance at first. I tried to focus in on it, and I was propelled after it. The disturbance started what I thought was an echo, was a psychic scream, flying through the void between stars. It was deeply alien, but it felt beyond malevolent. I followed to where it was heard, and billions of eyes so dark they drank starlight opened and focused on where it had come from, and started moving toward it, toward Earth. I had to warn them. The lost Legion was coming home.